The dust was so thick that morning that some men could barely see the tanks moving ahead of them. It was July 1943. The sun had already turned Sicily into an oven. American soldiers pushed forward through rough ground while artillery thunder rolled across the hills. Somewhere behind the lines, several British officers watched the advance with growing surprise. What they were seeing was not supposed to happen. Only months earlier, many of those same officers had spoken about the Americans with quiet confidence. Some called them enthusiastic amateurs. Others saw them as Britain's inexperienced little brother. The British Army had been fighting Germany since 1939. They had survived Dunkirk. They had fought in North Africa for years. Compared to them, the Americans looked new, untested, and naive. But now, in Sicily, something was happening that was forcing people to rethink everything. American troops were advancing fast. American armor was moving aggressively. American commanders were taking initiative. And at the center of it all stood one man who had made it his personal mission to destroy every doubt anyone had about the American Army. General George S. Patton. The story begins long before Sicily. It begins with an insult. Not one insult, but hundreds of them. Some were spoken openly. Others were whispered in officers' clubs and headquarters meetings. The Americans were rich. The Americans had plenty of equipment. The Americans had enthusiasm. But many British veterans believed that enthusiasm alone would not survive against the German army. In some ways, the skepticism was understandable. When the United States entered the war after December 1941, America had not been fighting a major modern war for years. Britain had already endured some of the hardest years of the conflict. British soldiers had learned painful lessons through defeat and sacrifice. Many British officers respected America as an ally. But respect for American military experience was another matter entirely. Then came North Africa, and at first the doubts seemed justified. In February 1943, American forces suffered a serious setback during the Battle of Kasserine Pass in Tunisia. German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's forces hit inexperienced American units hard. Communication broke down. Some positions collapsed. Coordination problems appeared everywhere. News of the defeat spread quickly. For critics, it looked like proof the Americans were not ready. Many British officers became even more convinced that American troops lacked the professionalism needed to fight Germany. But what most people did not realize was that Kasserine Pass would become one of the most important turning points of the entire war, because it caught the attention of George Patton. Patton was already famous inside military circles. He was demanding, relentless. He believed war was won by discipline, speed, confidence, and action. He had no patience for excuses. When Patton took command of the U.S. Second Corps in March 1943, he found an army that had been shaken by defeat. What happened next shocked many soldiers. Patton immediately imposed strict discipline. Uniform standards became strict. Training intensified. Inspections became constant. Officers were expected to lead from the front. Units drilled repeatedly. Mistakes were corrected immediately. Some soldiers complained. Some officers thought Patton was going too far. But Patton understood something important. The Germans did not care about excuses. The battlefield did not care about feelings. If American troops wanted respect, they would have to earn it. Every day, Patton pushed his men hard. Every day, he demanded more. And slowly, the transformation began. The same army that had struggled at Kasserine started improving. Confidence returned. Coordination improved. Leadership became stronger. The change was not instant. It never is. But it was real. Meanwhile, skepticism continued. In some British circles, the jokes had not stopped. American soldiers were still seen as newcomers. Many believed the real tests were still ahead. Patton knew that too. Training grounds could build confidence. Only battle could prove it. That opportunity arrived during Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily. The invasion began on July 10, 1943. More than 160,000 Allied troops participated. It was one of the largest amphibious operations ever attempted. The plan divided responsibilities between British General Bernard Montgomery's 8th Army and Patton's U.S. 7th Army. Initially, Patton's role seemed secondary. Montgomery's forces were expected to make the main advance. Many assumed the Americans would play a supporting role. But battle has a way of destroying assumptions. From the first days of the campaign, the situation became complex. German resistance proved stronger than expected. Terrain created problems. Roads became crowded. Plans changed constantly. Commanders had to adapt. Patton adapted quickly. His troops began advancing aggressively across western Sicily. Town after town fell. American units moved faster than many observers expected. The campaign soon became a race, not officially. But everyone understood who could advance farther, who could move faster, who could achieve more. Patton's soldiers embraced the challenge. The general himself thrived on it. Every success pushed the Americans closer to something they desperately wanted. Respect, as American forces captured Palermo on July 22, 1943, the achievement stunned many observers. The city was one of Sicily's major objectives. Patton's army had moved with remarkable speed. The operation demonstrated coordination, mobility, and determination. The image of inexperienced amateurs was becoming harder to defend. Yet the biggest test still lay ahead. Messina, located in northeastern Sicily, Messina was the final major objective. German forces were conducting a skillful withdrawal toward the city. The race to Messina became symbolic. Everyone understood its importance. The First Army to reach the city would make a powerful statement. As American troops pushed eastward, the fighting intensified. German rear guards resisted fiercely. Roads wound through difficult terrain. Mines, artillery, and ambushes slowed movement. Every mile had to be earned. Patton demanded speed without recklessness. His commanders balanced aggression with caution. The result was a campaign that showcased growing American professionalism. British observers noticed. German commanders noticed. Even soldiers themselves noticed. The army was no longer the same force that had struggled months earlier in Tunisia. It had changed. And change attracts attention. As the campaign continued, reports circulated throughout Allied headquarters. American units were performing well. American officers were showing initiative. American logistics were functioning effectively. The stereotypes that had once seemed obvious were beginning to crumble. What made the transformation even more impressive was its speed. Military organizations do not usually reinvent themselves in a matter of months. Yet that was exactly what was happening. Patton had not done it alone. Thousands of officers, non-commissioned officers, and enlisted men contributed. But his leadership provided the spark. He demanded excellence because he believed his soldiers were capable of it. And eventually, they proved him right. On August 17, 1943, American forces entered Messina. The moment carried enormous symbolic weight. The city represented more than a military objective. It represented validation. Months earlier, critics had questioned whether American troops could compete with experienced European armies. Now, American soldiers stood at one of the campaign's most important destinations. The achievement sent a message throughout the Allied world. The Americans had arrived. For many British officers, opinions began changing. Not because of speeches, not because of politics, because of military professionals respect competence. They respect performance. They respect success under difficult conditions. The Sicily Campaign provided all three. What makes this story fascinating is that Patton never seemed interested in winning arguments through words. He preferred another method. Performance: when people doubted him, he worked harder. When people questioned his army, he trained it harder. When critics predicted failure, he focused on preparation. The battlefield would provide the answer. And battle tends to be brutally honest. A soldier either performs or does not. An army either succeeds or fails. Excuses disappear quickly under fire. Patton understood that reality better than most. He knew reputation could be built slowly and destroyed quickly. He also knew that respect cannot be it must be earned. That principle guided much of his leadership. The transformation of American forces during 1943 was not perfect. Mistakes still occurred, problems still existed, no army is flawless. But the overall trend was undeniable. The American army was becoming a formidable fighting force. As the war continued into Italy, France, and eventually Germany itself, that reputation only grew stronger. Units that had once been viewed as inexperienced became battle-hardened veterans. Commanders gained experience. Soldiers gained confidence. The lessons learned in North Africa and Sicily paid dividends across Europe. Looking back, it is easy to forget how uncertain things once seemed. History often makes success look inevitable. It rarely. In early 1943, many people genuinely doubted whether American ground forces could match the standards of experienced European armies. Those doubts were real. The concerns were real. The skepticism was widespread. That is what makes the story meaningful. Because the Americans did not silence critics through promises. They silenced them through improvement. Every training exercise, every inspection, every march, every battle, every lesson learned. Together, those efforts created something powerful. A professional fighting force capable of taking on one of the most dangerous militaries in the world. For Patton personally, the campaign reinforced beliefs he had held for years. Preparation mattered. Discipline mattered. Leadership mattered. He believed ordinary men could achieve extraordinary results when properly trained and led. Sicily became evidence for that belief. There is another reason this story continues to resonate today. Most people have experienced some version of it. Being underestimated, being dismissed, being judged before having the opportunity to prove themselves. That feeling is universal. Patton understood it. His soldiers understood it. Many Americans in 1943 understood it. The response they chose remains powerful. They did not spend months arguing. They did not waste energy demanding recognition. They focused on becoming better. Then they let results speak. By the summer of 1943, those results were becoming impossible to ignore. The image of America's military changed dramatically. Allies gained confidence. Enemies gained respect. The balance of perceptions shifted. Not overnight, but steadily. One success built upon another. One campaign led to the next. One victory created momentum for future victories. Years later, people would remember Patton for many reasons. His personality, his speeches, his aggressiveness, his colorful image. But one of his most important achievements was helping transform a young wartime army into a confident and effective fighting force. That achievement mattered far beyond Sicily. It helped shape the remainder of the war, and it answered a question that had lingered for years. Could the Americans stand beside the experienced armies of Europe as equals? The answer emerged not from headquarters meetings or officers' clubs. It emerged from dusty roads, battlefield decisions, and soldiers advancing under fire. The answer emerged in Sicily. The answer emerged in places where failure carried deadly consequences. The answer emerged where reputations met reality. And reality delivered its verdict. When the guns finally fell silent and the campaign ended, something important had changed. The Americans were no longer viewed merely as Britain's inexperienced little brother. They were no longer newcomers waiting to prove themselves. They had crossed that line. They had earned their place. Not through words, not through rank, not through politics, through performance. George Patton understood something that remains true long after the war ended. Respect given freely can disappear quickly. Respect earned through effort tends to last. That summer in Sicily, under a burning Mediterranean sun, an army earned exactly that kind of respect. And once it was earned, nobody could take it away.